rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have?
What possible conflict of interest could there possibly be? Oh gee, only over 103, Mark Carney. Ladies and gentlemen, we bring you breaking, and I mean breaking news, as Mark Carney's assets have finally been disclosed. And the amount of conflicts of interest is beyond what we thought possible. Over 100 different companies that Mark Carney and these companies would be in conflict of interest if any decision relating to any of these companies or their competitors came across his desk. Let's take a look. Mark Carney to recuse himself from dealings with over 100 companies in sprawling government conflict screen. The screen means that Mark Carney cannot be involved in any official matters or decision-making processes that would further either his interests or of the 103 companies. Ottawa. Prime Minister Mark Carney will have to recuse himself from any discussions involving Brookfield Asset Management, payment processing giant Stripe, and dozens of other companies owned or controlled by them as part of an extensive conflict of interest screen. In a disclosure posted Friday afternoon on the Ethics Commissioner's website, Carney said he had agreed with the Watchdog's office to set up a conflict of interest screen between himself and Brookfield Asset Management, Stripe Inc., and any of 100 other companies owned or controlled by them at the time he set up a blind trust to oversee his assets. Before jumping into politics, Carney was chairman of Brookfield Asset Management, which has $1 trillion US in assets under management, and also helped lead efforts to raise capital for two major Brookfield clean energy funds. He was also on Stripe's board of directors. Quote, "This screen will help prevent me from giving preferential treatment to any of the companies while I exercise my official powers, duties, and functions as a reporting public officeholder," end quote, reads Carney's declaration. The screen means that Carney cannot be involved in, quote, "any official matters or decision-making processes," end quote, that would further either his or the interests of the 103 companies, many of which operate in the renewable energy and real estate sectors. Quote, "That's the largest scope I've ever heard of," end quote, commented Ian Stedman, a government ethics specialist who previously worked for Ontario's Integrity Commissioner. Quote, "I think they're going to have to get creative to make administration of the screen efficient," end quote, added Stedman, now an associate professor at York University. The screen will be administered by Carney's Chief of Staff, Marc-Andre Blanchard, and Clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Sabia, respectively. If he is made aware that a matter being discussed with him involves his ethics screen, he must recuse himself from the room and make a public declaration of recusal. But the Prime Minister isn't barred from all discussions that may impact those companies. Carney's screen contains a caveat where he can participate in discussions or decisions on matters that broadly affect any of the 103 companies if they are part of a larger group. Quote, "unless those interests are disproportionate to the other members of the class," end quote. It was not immediately clear what represents a, quote, "disproportionate interest." Stedman said that will be a key question for both administrators of Carney's screen. The ethics screen risks posing significant implementation challenges, if only because of the sheer scope of the Prime Minister's responsibilities, combined with the large number of companies to be screened. Adding to the complexity is that Carney has repeatedly promised to transform Canada into a conventional and clean energy quote-unquote superpower. Stedman said this is the first time the Ethics Commissioner will have to police such a broad ethics screen for the highest-ranking elected official whose hand touches nearly all facets of government. That means there will likely need to be a fair amount of self-policing from Carney regarding any potential conflicts in files brought to him. Quote, "This is going to be a new challenge for the institution to monitor in a way that ensures public confidence. Someone in this position with this robust of a portfolio end quote, Stedman said. Quote, if you have the chief of staff and the clerk watching 103 different companies at all times, they're not going to get anything else done. So there's going to have to be a little bit of self-policing on his part, end quote, he added. Carney's potential conflicts were a key critique from the opponents after he was elected Liberal leader in early March. At first, he was dismissive of the notion he may have some conflicts of interest relating to his previous work at Brookfield before eventually admitting that he'd likely require an ethics screen. One of the screens the Prime Minister will be subject to is with Westinghouse, one of the world's largest nuclear companies, which Brookfield Asset Management acquired a majority ownership stake in while Carney was co-head of the investment fund. Carney notably name-dropped Westinghouse while praising nuclear energy during a leaders' debate during the election, which raised some eyebrows. Other noteworthy conflict of interest screens relate to some of Brookfield's investments in India's clean energy and renewable sector, Leap Green, Avada Group, and CleanMax, through the Brookfield Global Transition Fund, which was co-managed by Carney. The disclosure also contains an extensive list of companies running across 16 full pages of shares and share options Carney owns that are either divested in a blind trust or held in an investment account managed by a third party that he did not control or direct. In his blind trust, Carney put shares of north of 60 advisors, Stripe, Partners Value Investments LP, Cultivo Land PBC, Watershed Technology, and options and deferred share units of the Brookfield Corporation and Brookfield Asset Management. According to Brookfield's annual report, Carney was entitled to 209,300 stock options at $35.13 each and 200,000 options at $40.07 each, for a market value of more than $6.8 million as of December 31st, 2024. The expiration date on these options is either 2033 or 2034. The assets held by an investment account managed by a third party include shares from Airbnb, Amazon, American Express, Apple, BlackRock, Coca-Cola, Costco, DoorDash, Lockheed Martin, Lululemon, Moderna, Netflix, Palantir Technologies, Pfizer, and Uber. Holy crap, folks. Now, before we get into this, I just want to remind everybody of the exchange that Mark Carney had with Rosemary Barton when she questioned him on his conflicts of interest.
The rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Someone who spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with those rules.
What possible conflict of interest could there possibly be? Oh gee, only over 103, Mark Carney. 103. It's a joke, folks. This guy can't even, take a crap without having a conflict of interest with something. He can't even go down to Tim Hortons probably and buy a coffee. He has to send his chief of staff to decide what coffee shop he's going to be getting coffee from. And there's so many that we're going to have to rely, we're going to have to trust Mark Carney on self-policing. Are you kidding? As for those 16 pages, folks, take a look, because here they are. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the list. Look Look at these companies. Now, there's English on the left and French on the right, but still, look at this list. It goes on and on and on and on and on. How in the heck are we supposed to believe that the Prime Minister of Canada is going to be able to manage this conflict of interest? Over 103 conflicts of interest. Now, this is going to take a lot longer than one video for us to get into this, but we wanted to show you the summary of this, and it is insane. Absolutely insane. Canadians, whether you voted for Mark Carney or not, do you seriously think that there's going to be literally any decision that Mark Carney makes, or that he doesn't make, that he knows the government is going to make, that is not going to have some possible financial benefit for him? Look inside yourself, Canadians.